consistency and like wetness. So that means to me we need to add. Okay. So the natural building that you find in the Pacific Northwest, a lot of it, well, there's lots of different kinds of types that are used, but most of it's using ingredients that are kind of raw material from the ground. So in this region, that's clay and sand, and we have an excess of also the material of straw. So in different parts of the world, when people are doing natural building, they're using similar ingredients, if not the exact same ingredients, but oftentimes what is available just in the ground around them. Thank you. And as it was described to me when I first learned about natural building, in the 3 ingredients that make up cob, which is a lot of the natural building around Portland, Oregon and around the Pacific Northwest, the sand and the clay and the straw. There's a wheelbarrow of straw up, I think on the other side. Just if you go farther up the path, there's a wheelbarrow that you'll see on the right. You could bring that down to the plate. So the sand, if you were to compare it to kind of a conventional building, the sand is like the bricks, and the clay is like the mortar that kind of glues the bricks together, and then the straw in that mixture is kind of like the rebar that helps kind of knit all of the material together to make one sort of homogeneous mix. And when you combine these 3 raw materials, you can get it to do lots and lots of different wonderful things. In this raw form, we combine it to make cob, and then we could use it to be really strong and build a wall, or like that's what we created the structure of the Cat Palace from. Or if we wanted to do something more refined, like a plaster on a wall, you would literally sift. Use something as simple as a window screen to sift the sand particles so that only the smallest bits fall through the screen, or you'd maybe use a bigger screen for the clay so that you kind of work out any rocks that might be in the clay, and you would combine the same kind of ingredients, but you'd make a much different mix that would do a different thing, like be plaster that you could sculpt with or do a finished coat on a wall. So we love these materials, and one of the things that I love about natural building, and in my experience, and I think many people's experience, is that once you start to interact with it, you realize that it's not anything different from what we've all done as kids, which is just investigate the world around us and kind of have an intuitive sense of what it wants to do. Like when we were kids making mud pies or building like little mud huts, like this is the stuff that comes really naturally to us. And I love that about natural building. And so, do you bring a shovel down? Well, if I had a smaller bucket, I'd make less, but we have big buckets, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a big old thing. This is kind of like, I would start out, if I was making cob for a project, I would start out with this quantities. Yeah, because it goes really fast. I always feel like I make too much and then it vanishes. What I like to do is start with the sand and kind of make a base of that. And this is just really cheap playground sand. I think we purchased somewhere. And I like to put the sand on first because we're mixing these 2 ingredients together, and putting the sand on first kind of gives like a sandpaper that makes it easier to squish the clay into.
Where do you get the clay?
The clay, the VBC has a long-standing relationship with the cemetery across the river from us, and they dig a lot of holes. And we need a lot of clay. So this is clay. Will you just set it down right there for me? Thank you so much. This is clay-rich soil. So this isn't. What's that?
Is all of Portland clay?
Not all, but much of it is. Yeah, it's not difficult to come across really clay-rich soil. A lot of you probably have it in your backyards.
Some deposits are just a little bit higher in clay content than others.
And if we had more time, I would talk to you about different ways you can learn about the clay and your like clay to silt content. There's different tricks you can do, but
the water, putting them in the water.
Yeah, the shake test. But as it is, well, we can talk about that later. Okay, so come on in, you guys. Help me mix this. So this is just, and there is rocks in here. So you kind of just have to be a little bit careful. But we're just using the technology of our feet to tool technology and lots of field technology. I like to do a lot of grinding. And we're not going to try to... Yeah, it can hurt a little bit.
In a good way.
Yeah, it's a good hurt. Yeah.
I'll take 2 minutes out. You can go.
Yeah. So worth it. And we'll do this for a little bit, and then we're going to use some tarp technology to help us mix it too on the tarp. Nice bucket.
Do you have a project we're going to use this after it's made?
We don't.
Better come up with one.
We'll probably just hold on to it until we inevitably will need it.
So then you just rehydrate it?
Yes, that's a wonderful thing about talc is that it doesn't expire. The only thing that would technically expire would be the straw in it. Like it would maybe if it was left out and the elements would rot away. We just rehydrate it and add more.
So then you have to put something on it to make it waterproof, I guess.
You do, but it depends on if it's inside or outside and if it has a good roof.
All of that will come later.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to.
I think we're going to do a natural building evening later in the year when we'll be inside talking about it. We just wanted to give you all a chance to feel it. Okay, so let's step off the tarp. We've mixed it enough for now, and then will somebody grab those 2 corners? And we're just going to use this part to kind of wrap it around a little bit. Yeah. And then let's set it down. And another really good way is to, will you grab that corner with me? To roll it together. Part of the people who have taught me a lot about natural building, I'm very grateful that they also really value talking about how to do this really laborious work and be really body conscious and not hurt ourselves in the meantime. So a lot of it's like instead of lifting like this, like trusting you just use your body weight to pull it for you. So that's another rabbit hole of natural building that we can go down. Yeah.
Is there a nail in there? Like that.
Look, pause. There you go. Thanks, team. All right. Thank you. All right, here we go. We didn't know that was going to be part of our natural building demonstration. So then we're going to add more of this sand. And I'm not going to actually add the whole bucket because I have a suspicion that we don't need to. But now we can mix it just a little bit more. The what?
The cake mix metaphor?
No.
It's basically like cake mix to mix the dry ingredients.
True. Yeah. And now, let's pick up the tarp and kind of collect it a little bit in the middle. And then, like the cake mix metaphor, you know how you make the well that receives the water. So the thing with the water is that it's much easier to add a little bit more than it is to add a bunch more than to take away. So I always start out with less water than I know I'm going to eventually need. And this is where it really gets fun. And come on in, guys. And then you just keep mixing.
Oh, you go for it.
Yeah, I was...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got it.
More water. You have to be careful of like a wet spot, not getting left out. So in that moment, we pick up the tarp and we have the wet stuff kind of fall back into the dry stuff. Let's do that. Will you guys step aside and we can use the tarp? Yeah, and then you just kind of keep going. And when you do this for a while, you find yourself, of course, getting into a rhythm with the people you're doing it with and just having hopefully really clear and good communication about like when to pick up the tarp together, and it just kind of becomes a bit of a cob dance.
It's so fun.
How's it feel? You guys need more water? Seems like it needs a bit more water.
Maybe a little.
It's like running over here.
Yeah, let's just add that in and let's use the tarp to roll it on itself. Just do a little squishing and then we'll roll it together. Okay, let's get off the tarp and we'll use it to help us lift it. So, instead of doing that, we're going to just roll it. So we grab that corner and walk backwards with me. There we go. And then set it. Well, yeah, and so, I'm sorry. Did I get you? So it revealed all this dry stuff on the bottom. So that's handy, and now we can mix this in. And it seems like it still needs even a little bit more water to me. Yeah, thank you. Just this, yeah, perfect, thank you.
It's heavy, like when you roll it.
Yes.
Like
It gets heavy really fast.
Yeah.
When you think about it, it's like picking up 3 buckets of sand, right? So let's roll it back this way. Would you two grab those corners and roll back towards the house? So come stand on this side of it and then roll back. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. So what we're looking for is that when we do that with the tarp, that it kind of creates a solid mass. Some people call it a manatee, other people call it a burrito, but that's what we're looking for as far as consistency and like wetness. So that means to me we need to add a little bit more water, and just a little bit more footwork.
Get it between the toes.
Yes.
Nice. Clean as I thought it was.
Yeah, yep. Yes, it is exfoliating. Pediatric.
We need to get over this idea that we have to stay completely clean all the time.
Yeah.
It's not helping the cause.
Sterility is healthy.
So I'm seeing that these guys want to pull it back. Let's get off the tarp for them so they can do that.
Germs
Yeah.
tiny and invisible.
There you go.
You're like at the whale show, just like.
So do you guys see how it started to kind of congeal into one mass? That's kind of what we're looking for. This is a little bit too much water, which is okay because we still have to add straw. But this is basically
Manatee, 'cause it looks like
a manatee. Yeah.
I was trying to figure. I'm like, I've never touched a manatee. I don't know what that texture is like.
You know, the manatee texture.
Everybody knows that one.
So when we're getting ready, this is perfect for this stage. And now I'm just spreading it out so that when we add the straw, it's going to have lots of surface area to hold the straw. And what you're going for is that when you pick cob up, that's just kind of full of toothy straw kind of coming from every direction. You don't want straw in a clump, and you don't want so little straw that you just pick it up and there's a couple pieces. You want it kind of, toothy is the best description, like mouthful of straw teeth. So I like to put it on and then just do the same thing, work it in with our feet. Awesome. Yeah. I'm gonna do a little bit more. That cold just behind.
At least it's still covered.
It's kind of difficult to get the straw in.
It seems like it would be, but it doesn't. You'll see it.
You have to roll it mostly to get the straw in?
Yeah, rolling helps a lot. So we'll work this in and then we'll roll it and make it over time.
Did you do your training at Top Cottage with those folks? Or?
I didn't. Most of I learned how by doing projects at this home.
Awesome.
Yeah, so the cat house is the first one I helped with, and then different projects in the house and challenge.
I'm going to practice this.
Awesome.
Really good.
Well, welcome to the rest of your life. Yeah, let's do the hard road. Can't do that. Yep. We gotta wait for each other. Excellent.
You've got the coffee.
Aha! See the manatee.
You've got the coffee.
I got it. Yeah. So one of the things that we love about this way of building is that if you find the way and if you have the will, you can create home for yourself for free. You know, not free because it takes your time and because there's lots of pieces that aren't free, probably that you'd add into it, but it's a way of kind of bringing our basic human need to have shelter back into our hands, which I think is really profound. Another reason that we love natural building is that there's nothing about it that's harmful unless there's a really sharp rock, right? Like if the house needs to come down at any time, that's okay. It can just go back into the earth and it won't hurt anything. In the same way as that is true, it's also something that everyone can participate in. So like there's no power tools that are going to hurt a kid, and there's nothing about this that you couldn't do with your whole family or your whole community. So we will talk more about that later, but as this is nearing completion, I just wanted to share that.
And maybe we can pass around some cop balls so everybody gets
Absolutely. So let's roll it one more time and then I think we'll call it good. Then you guys grab those corners and roll it back towards the house. That's toothy enough. What's that? That's toothy enough? I'm going to pick it up and make sure, but I think so. It looks toothy enough to me. Okay.
Yeah, it's comfy. The start isn't too comfy.
This seems good. So every mixture is different and appropriate for different uses. This is a structural cob mix, and I pick it up and that's really nicely toothy. This feels not quite clay rich enough for me. So like I said, that's the 2-to-1 is the beginning point, and then we would amend it as we needed to. We'd take that and pass it around. So if we were going to build with this, I would add a bit more sand. But as it is, this is
Sand or clay?
Oh, excuse me, add more clay. Thank you. As it is, however, this would work. This is cob. And
Some places seem
when
like
we're
over here.
that could be when we're entering the world of working this material, the thing I like to welcome people to do is just really use all of your senses to investigate it. So you feel it with your hands, you can smell it. A really important thing to do is bring it to your ear and listen to it, because that tells you a lot about the sand to clay content. And then of course to listen to it. Literally squish it, put it to your squish it and just listen to it. It tells you something about the mixture.
No, I agree with you. I think it's very sensitive.
So can you guys feel how maybe you'd want this to be a little bit more clayey? Yeah. But can you feel how at the same time you can create shape with it, that you can see how you could create structure with it? So imagine, so if you have a wall and there's your foundations laying on the ground, and then you just start taking this and building up from your foundation with it. And you'd use what you call your cobber's thumb, because like this straw is the rebar. You'd want all of it to knit into the other cob that you're putting it onto. So you'd use your thumb, or some people use a stick, and just kind of literally work them together.
If you have too much sand in there, I mean, your wall would be fairly unstable after drying, or what would be the issue, the consequence?
That's a good question. I feel like the sand is what actually makes it really structurally sound. Like if you're thinking of the bricks, or like it's that metaphor, it's the bricks. But I think why we would want more clay is that it would be really hard to work with. So if you
would take only sand and straw, it would fall apart completely.
It would, exactly.
So
which is why
if you
we
would
would
only
need more
take
clay.
only clay, you would basically have something like ceramic.
Yeah.
So that's my question. So if you really build a wall, of course you have the studs and everything holding it together. But if you had too much sand, wouldn't it get so brittle that it would basically fall apart?
Yeah, you need the clay to hold it together.
Or would you put more clay on the outside?
If you made this material with just a lot of sand in
If
it,
it had a little more sand than was ideal, then could you put more clay on outside?
I think you need the clay to be mixed into it so that it can be like that glue to hold it together. I feel like the thing that I've learned about natural building is that there's a lot of different ways you can come at it, and I have yet to come across like the one right answer for things, which is exciting. I think there's something wonderful about that. So there's probably, like a lot of things. There's probably a way you could make this mixture and have it be too sandy and do a clay edge, but I don't think it's the best way to get the most out of these materials.
I didn't ask because I figured.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for those questions. Does anybody else have questions?
Do you use ever?
Do I have time for a question? Should we
Oh
wrap
yeah,
up?
totally. And I want, love everybody to get a feel, make a ball.
Do you ever
Has
put
everybody?
Not with your toes, then with your fingers.
Yeah.
wheat paste in the mixture for any reason?
So you're asking Jerry if we put wheat paste in the mixture for any reason?
Yeah.
Yes. When I've used wheat paste in these materials a lot, it's been for making natural paints with or natural plasters with.
But like the structural bits, would you?
I don't think that's necessary.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Okay, just like an overkill thing.
Yeah, because I think the wheat paste does the same thing as the clay. It kind of is a binder that helps hold everything together, which you need more when you're creating really thin veneer like you do with a plaster or a paint. But this has so much mass and ability to hold its own that I have not used wheat paste in cob, and I haven't heard of other people.
I was
Doesn't
just
mean you
wondering if
shouldn't
it made it like
investigate
more waterproof, indoor versus outdoor, whatever.
Interesting.
I don't
More waterproof. Would wheat paste make it? I don't believe so. I feel like wheat paste still is subject to mold.
Yeah.
Like people don't use wheat paste in plasters that they're doing in a bathroom because that's a room that gets a lot of moisture released in the air and that would mold.
Okay.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
As far as waterproofing, there are some techniques for
There are.
water resistant, right? So you use some mixtures of oils.
Yes. So you can, a lot of times people will, if they're using natural building materials outside, they'll hydrate the surface of it with a combination of beeswax or linseed oil. People do different kinds of oils. Have you heard of another kind of oil being used?
Yeah, in the tropics where there's rubber plants, I've seen raw liquid rubber added in
Wow.
for the outer layer for like more waterproofing.
I thought I also heard of crunching up limestone.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Is that another method to do that?
Yes, absolutely. So it's like a natural cement basically that people will often use for an exterior plaster. And I'm sure people have mixed it in with cob. I have never, but I'm sure that's something people have done. But absolutely, natural lime is a tool of natural building, very much so.
In this climate, just historically, was this type of building used, like in this region?
I think this region was more like timber framing.
Right. Okay.
So what makes this really, like when I think of indigenous people and their traditional homes, I think of like long houses and timber frames. But the thing that has been used is this insulative fiber of straw. I feel like this is really, has been used for a long time in this region, I believe, and is very appropriate to apply to the weather of the Pacific Northwest. And that it gets cold and we need its insulative help. Yeah. So cob, like what most people that feel like they don't know cob are actually secretly familiar with like the adobe houses of the Southwest. And that's when I think of like indigenous groups that have been using cob. It's more like really dry regions that we're turning it into bricks, using these same materials and turning it into bricks, drying them, and then building with those.
So here in this climate, the way that people are making it last is because they're kind of building these roofs over them, like
Yes.
timber roofs, and to protect it.
Well observed, very much so.
Okay.
So this is really like indigenous to more like European countries. Like you can go to Germany and find houses made of cob that are almost 1,000 years old. They're still standing, and other places of the world too.
It cannot last concrete because
It
it
cannot
has
last concrete.
plastic property, meaning like it flexes to withstand earthquakes and such.
And those houses have a good pair of boots and a good hat on.
Thank you. Yeah.
which helps them to not melt because
Yeah.
wouldn't this material, if it was getting wet all the time, deteriorate over time?
Yes, it would. Will you say what you mean by a good pair of hat and a good pair of boots so people
Good
can?
foundation and good roof.
Yes. Yep. And so good being like a really tall one to get away from water and a really wide one to protect the walls from water. That's, thank you for bringing that up. That's very much the way that this material is able to be really strong in this climate because we have so much rain.
Francis, do you know about seismic durability in an earthquake? What the plaster would do, what the top would do?
Well, I'm not someone who is really well versed in building sciences that would be able to give you a really scientifically profound answer to that question. I feel like what Matt Bebo said about it being kind of an elastic material. So if you build it really thoughtfully, I trust and understand that it's a material that could be very well suited to something like an earthquake. But you'd have to be really thoughtful about how you'd build with it, just like you would any material. Any other questions? And did everybody get to hold the cob?
Where do you get the sand and the clay from here?
So the sand we usually purchase from like a bulk landscaping company. And it's fairly inexpensive. And the clay, we have a partnership with a cemetery across the river that has really clay-rich soil and just don't need it. So we get that for free. And a lot of the natural building that happens in Portland is oftentimes connected to the village building convergence. And when there's a natural building project, we supply these materials to those projects as part of our support for hoping that more natural building continues to happen in Portland, because we believe that this is a wonderful solution to the future we want to have happen, that this is a part of the ingredients of that. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, Mom.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So if someone wanted to build a structure and we contacted you, do you supply like volunteers and people, or do we have to find just
We
people
don't
to-
supply that, but we would help talk to you about how to call upon your existing community and or find the community around you to help make that happen. And we'd help support you in making that happen. Yeah. And secretly, probably some of us would show up totally because we love it, but that's not that's not our role that we claim responsibility for. It's a support role.
This type of building requires community,
Yeah.
It does.
which is part of the reason why we embrace it.
Yeah.
Not the only reason, part of the reason.
Thanks, you guys. I think that's about time. Is there any
Thank you.
last burning questions?
We're going to get to do more as the course goes on, but we wanted to, this opening weekend, besides the introductory stuff, we really wanted to give some tastes and some techniques.